Welcome to the Soaring Through Adversity podcast, dedicated to empowering individuals with cognitive and physical disabilities to live beyond limitations. I am Renee Bragelet, your host. Through candid conversations and inspiring interviews, we will discover the abilities found in every disability. Let's learn, understand, and embrace the world of disabilities, fostering inclusivity and respect. My guests today are Susan and Lexi Haas, a mother-daughter duo and co-author of Lexi's journey in their book, The Year of the Buttered Cat, which focuses on disability advocacy and education. Today's episode is Unstoppable Voice. First of all, let's begin by saying Lexi is nonverbal and has pre-written her responses, which she will play on a text-to-speech app on her device. Lexi, are you ready to get started? Where did you get the title of your book?
The whole explanation is a huge spoiler, so I'll just give you some background about this cat we affectionately named the Cat. When I was a baby, we found a feral kitten near my grandparents' house. He had a butter wrapper stuck to his back. Our dog, Luke, licked him clean, and the cat decided then and there that Luke was his mother. We brought the cat home, but as soon as the butter taste was gone, Luke lost interest in him. The cat spent the rest of Luke's life trying to win him over. At one point in our book, the cat goes missing. When he comes back, he's weirdly covered in butter again. Luke licks him clean, and of course the cat is thrilled with the attention. This becomes a recurring mystery in the book, but that's as much as we can say here without ruining the fun.
Susan, you said in the book that Lexi can't walk or talk. Will you explain that?
Sure. It's a little bit of a spoiler, but in the days and weeks after her birth, Lexi developed high bilirubin, which is the substance in the blood that causes jaundice. The yellowing of her skin and eyes that we're all pretty familiar with.
Yes.
Most babies have some
Yes.
of this jaundice, but it's normally not a problem, but it needs to be monitored because if it's not and it gets too high, it floods out of goes out of the blood and into the brain where it damages areas that control movement and speech and sometimes hearing. And that's what happened to Lexi. Her bilirubin was not monitored, and unfortunately, it damaged that part of her brain. Her hearing is fine, and her thinking is more than fine, but her movement and speech are terribly affected.
And there's been many surgeries according to your book. What was supposed to be the outcomes of them? What were the expectations?
So when she was 6 or 7, she had her first. It was a little before that when we started planning it, but when she turned 7, she had her first deep brain stimulation surgery, or DBS. A lot of people have heard about that for like Parkinson's disease.
Okay.
This was, back then, this was done while you were awake.
I believe it still is.
Yeah, I think some people do, and some places are able to do that under anesthesia. But our thoughts were that we could place this in the area where she had a brain injury, which is coincidentally the same area that is affected in Parkinson's disease. So the doctor's thoughts were that this would eventually help her movement. Help her control some of her, maybe even her speech, maybe walking. It certainly did help her movement a lot. Obviously, it didn't go so far as helping her speech, but
Which is where she says in the book, waiting on her body to come in.
yes, she was the youngest of 5 kids, and she mentions in the book she didn't really know what to expect as far as how do babies learn to walk and talk. She didn't have anybody to follow, so she thought maybe this is just something that just happens. And I've talked to several other people who have similar disabilities, and they have said the same thing, that they were younger. They just thought maybe this is just eventually my body's going to come in and I'll learn how to walk and talk.
Yeah.
Obviously that's not the case, but that was just another product of a sharp and active mind trying to figure things out.
When did you realize how truly intelligent Lexi is?
Oh, geez. I would say when Lexi was, from the time she was a few months old, 6 months or so, she was very interested in a learning to read video that one of the other kids, my son Tucker, was watching. He was 5. And we would put that on for them. And when it would stop, she would like lose her mind, and she would just like, "Ah," you know, put it back right back on again. And she watched it over and over, right, intently. And I also used to play with them with her with letters, magnetic letters, and a cookie sheet, an old metal cookie sheet. She would sit in my lap, and pretty soon she would start dragging those letters around and spelling on this cookie sheet.
Wow.
Started out with, like, by the time she was 10 months old, she was spelling out her name and then little words like cat and whatnot. By the time she was a year old, she was spelling hundreds of words, and even complete sentences
A year old.
by the time she was a year old. So we figured
Wow.
it out pretty early. And, we were thankfully aided by a lot of her therapists who could see early on that she was also very bright.
How did you figure out that she would be able to put together letters on that board?
She really just did it herself. I mean, we played with those letters. We were playing with them. I did this early education things with all of my kids, and I tried to treat her the same that I treated the other 4 older children. That was my only template. So, we would, when they were little, we would talk about the colors and the letters and, what they are and what they sound like. And I think she had just figured that out because she just started pulling the letters and spelling things without prompting.
Well, what made you decide to write the book, Susan?
Well, it's a bit of a story, and I'll give you just the heads up, and listeners a heads up that it's a little difficult to hear, but I think it's important to say. Um, so Lexi's surgery was basically experimental, doing deep brain stimulation on a child for a movement disorder was something that hadn't been done very often. It had never been done for her condition, which was called kernicterus. So it was in the news. The local news kind of became national news, and then pretty soon we were hearing about, this little brave little girl from all over the world. So my husband started a Facebook page just to keep up with the messages. And we pretty soon had 6 or 7 thousand followers, and people were truly interested and invested in Lexi's outcome. And almost all of these messages were very positive and very hopeful. But one day, we woke up to this message on her page. And here's the trigger because this is pretty terrible. It said, "My best friend Lexi died last night in a car accident, and this retard gets to live." Um,
Oh my
we
God.
were shocked. I mean, obviously, this was a grieving teen who was lashing out in the only way she knew how. And she was banned and reported, of course. But I couldn't get this out of my head that there were people out there who still think of persons with disabilities as lesser, um, or even disposable.
Yes.
Um, and we knew then and there that we needed to let the world know that that's not the case, that's really, people with disabilities are some of the most remarkable people you will ever meet, and certainly some of the most resilient. There's a lot to learn from them and with them. And they have voices that need to be heard and elevated. And so we decided to start with Lexi's.
As I see Lexi's beautiful smile and have read the book, it's absolutely amazing how she is. She's just lighting up this room.
Yeah, she does. She always has. She's always been a big inspiration to me in that way. I know early years, I was pretty depressed about what happened to her and felt a little bit hopeless. But every day, this child would wake up happy, completely aware of what was going on around her, and completely understanding at some point what happened, um, and still choosing to be happy, choosing happiness. And I like, if she can do that, I can do that too.
Exactly, exactly. My husband's brother had Down syndrome, and he's one of the kindest individuals I've ever met. And I mentioned to you before we got on the air about Johnny and Friends Disability Ministry and doing their retreats and going in there. It was after I'd been there for a few hours and seeing all the people there and their caregivers, I made the statement that this feels like what a little slice of heaven's going to feel like.
Yeah, for
Because there
sure.
was no judgment. Everybody was the same. Everybody was talking to everybody. And it was what I had missed when I was in the wheelchair.
Wouldn't that be great if that was the sort of world that we lived in?
Hopefully we can continue this progress for example, you're making with Lexi and getting the information out there. And, we wonder why things happen. And she's made a big difference in a lot of people's lives. Lexi, how old were you when you started writing?
I started spelling when I was 10 months old by dragging magnetic letters around an old cookie sheet. Mom would sit me in her lap and hold my wrist steady. I was writing sentences by the time I was around a year old, but if you mean composition, the revelation that I could get across more complex ideas through writing, that came about through a homeschool writing project with Mom. We would write down things that happened to me that were funny, or sad, or outrageous. That was my first introduction to real writing. Those little short stories later became much of the background story in the Year of the Buttered Cat.
So you guys started out when you wrote the book as like a journal kind of thing that you were later
Exactly.
able to put together in a book.
Exactly. So we had a basis sort of when we decided to write it, we started with that, and that journal kind of became the backstory of the Year of the Butter Cat is a dual timeline story. The front story is the 24-hour countdown to a second DBS surgery that she had when she was 14. And then she was looking back to this transformative year, which was the Year of the Buttered Cat. And those were all of those little vignettes that were then pulled together into that one story.
So the Year of the Buttered Cat came around the year that she made a lot of progress.
Well, she made a lot of connections. Let's just say she figured out what happened. She figured out exactly why she would be disabled and that her body wasn't coming in. But she also figured out her gifts and the things that made her uniquely her. So I would say, yeah, that's progress. It's maybe not the type of progress that she would have hoped for, but it was the progress that she needed. Is that acceptance and self-love despite the circumstances.
Well, how long did it take you to write the book?
It was about a 5-year process to write and edit the Year of the Buttered Cat. We were still figuring out how to write together. Now we are much faster.
Lexi, I understand you speak French and that you're pretty good at it. Do you still practice?
Not really. I don't have many opportunities to use French these days.
Well, I understand from reading the book that you're better than your mom.
Definitely. Was always. We sat in that class together for a decade, maybe, or close to it. And every fall, it was like I was being introduced to that language for the first time. And all of those children would be like, would come back after the summer break and would be just chattering away in French. And I would be like, totally lost. I was terrible. It's true. It's hard to teach an adult brain a new language for sure. But I think I was particularly bad at it.
You created your own means of communicating. What do you do for yes and for no, Lexi?
When I need to communicate quickly, I stick my tongue out for yes and make a little growl for no. It isn't pretty, but it gets the job done.
Lexi, don't you have a special name for your communication device? What do you call it?
I named her Haha because back then I thought she was good for some laughs, but that was about it.
Because she helped you a lot. How long have you been using this device?
I have used some sort of computerized augmentative communication since I was about 5 or 6, but today I use several different types of augcom to communicate.
Stay with us while we take a break and hear a word from our sponsor.
The Soaring Through Adversity podcast is presented by Victory in Time. Victory in Time's mission is to help executives, leaders, and business owners excel in their faith, lives, and work. Through speaking engagements, one-on-one mentoring, and our mastermind groups, known as Victory Circles, Victory in Time wants to help you become the best leader you can be. Find out more at victoryintime.com. Also, don't forget to pick up your copy of the Soaring Through Adversity book, Life Lessons to Lead Triumph and Rise Above. All net proceeds from sales of the Soaring Through Adversity book benefit Victory Advantage.
Well, let's get back, and I want to ask you about her surgeries. Do you expect that there'll be any more?
She has, unfortunately, over the last several years, has had surgeries to remove leads because they've become infected. Oddly, because she's had this DBS for more than 10 years before she had her first infection, which meant we had to go in to the hospital and take out, one lead.
She just went through that recently, didn't
She
she?
did. She did. She went through the most recent one was just like a part of an old lead that got infected, and we don't know why they are because it's a closed system. There's nothing coming in from the outside. So unfortunately, she's lost more of those, and that has resulted in much of her dystonia coming back and making it a little more difficult to communicate, a little more difficult to use haha because that's an eye gaze communication and it depends on her eyes. But she's a resilient person and she's just figured out new ways. There's just nothing that's going to stop her.
Eye gaze communication.
Yes.
One thing I admire about you, Susan, is the attention that you have given Lexi and the support. One of the things that I talk about is people that can work, they should be able to work. It's a passion that they need to get out of bed every morning.
Oh, for sure.
And one of the things I learned when I had my business was that it may take a person with a disability longer to learn it, but because they function in life on a whole different level, figuring out so many things that they must do on their own, there's no better employee than that person, not just from that perspective, but they're so loyal, and the encouragement that they provide for the other employees is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I have to say that a lot of Lexi's current spelling and progress with augmentative communication is thanks to her sister Hannah, who works with her religiously on partner assisted scanning, which is a low tech type of communication, where for us, we have it, letters are categorized into red, yellow, green, and blue categories. And so all you have to do then is to go through red, yellow, green, blue. She'll stick her tongue out when she gets to the color that contains the letter that she wants. And then you just scroll through those letters within that color. It's just a much faster way of communicating. So, I mean, like I said, there's just nothing that's going to stop her, even if she can't use her eyes for communication. She will, she is pretty resilient, and a lot of thanks to Hannah for her hard work on that, and her SLP, her speech language pathologist, for helping us work on that.
Well, she may be nonverbal, but she never stops communicating.
For sure.
And Susan, you mentioned Hannah. She's in the room.
She is
with us today, and her smile is infectious. And the way Lexi looks at her is just, how could you have a bad day?
She has, they have a special bond. Lexi has four really amazing siblings, all of whom are affected her in each in different ways. But she spends a lot of time these days with Hannah, so they do have a very special bond.
I read about a man in your book that was insisting on prayer for Lexi in a restaurant. How did that make you feel?
That was really the catalyst in the Year of the Buttered Cat of her looking for her gifts, because this man came up to us in a Shoney's and on the way back from the beach, and he got up and started praying in tongue, which is, first of all, it was very loud to the whole. It felt very intrusive, I have to say. Lexi has people stop and pray for her often, and I am I think it all depends on the context. I know
Mhm.
this always comes from a good place.
Yes.
However, when people come up and say, they want to help free her from, this demon or the way that this information is given to her about why they're praying for her is often misses the mark. It sends her the message that she's not okay or good enough, in a damaged body.
Mm.
That you need to be whole and you need to be typical to be able to have a meaningful life. And that's goes against everything we believe in. So, if I ask people if they want to pray, to say, to pray for her continued, good health, to pray for her continued use of her gifts, but not just make a meaningless prayer about, oh, well, I hope that you are cured. Um, which might make them feel better when they walk away, but I don't know
It's
that
not about making them
it's
feel
not.
better.
It's let's be realistic. It's also, I think it's very helpful to think about boundaries. And I think it's one thing to come up to somebody and say, I'm going to include her in my prayers tonight, whether you're specific or not, rather than doing it very loudly and in public. Sometimes feels like a crossing of boundaries.
And whose attention
Right.
is he trying to put the prayer on?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it just winds up making you feel very awkward.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, it sent Lexi on a journey, but I think the rest of us were pretty cringe. Right. You remember that? You still remember?
How long ago was that?
Oh, gosh. You were 5-ish, 4?
Well, Lexi, your memory's definitely better than mine.
Yes, me
My
too.
goodness.
Well, she helps all of us. She tells me where my car keys are. She tells me she is, yeah. We use her memory all the time.
I remember where she talked about how the cat was missing and nobody else
Oh,
had
well, listen,
realized the cat was missing.
that is another thing, for somebody who is in a wheelchair, maybe, and is not getting up and running around. Sometimes their attention to detail is so much better, than those of us who are distracted by, the daily physical things that we're doing. So, and I'd say that's part of the reason she started spelling so young and why she has maybe why part of her memory, she pays attention to things that I think escape the rest of us.
Do you guys plan on writing another book?
Lexi, I'll let you answer that one.
Yes, in fact, we have already sold a second book, this one a middle grade fiction story, to Little Brown and Company. That one is titled Fooled. It will come out next October, and we have started working on a third one.
Oh, that's fantastic. Can you give us a little sneak peek as to what it's about?
Sure. Well, this one is also features disabled characters. This is about a group of kids in a special education classroom in a very rundown school in a kind of a rundown part of rural North Carolina. And they start this magic school in their special education classroom, just for fun. And then with a run-in with school bullies, leads the rest of the school to believe that these kids are actually magicians. And they team up with the student body president to deliver magic good luck charms to the student body, to try to make the school better, to try to make the school believe in themselves, and to bring them up from the worst school district. Uh, so it's a very fun, empowering book for people with disabilities, and we just had a lot of fun writing it.
And it's been purchased
Yes, it has been purchased, and we've all gone through edits, and it comes out next October with
next
Little Brown and
October.
Company.
Can't wait. Can't wait.
Mhm.
Mom, where do you draw your greatest strength?
Oh, from my family, no doubt. My husband is amazing. He deals with his own health issues, but he also greets every day with positivity. Um, all we've always we have a big family, with 5 kids, and we've always relied on each other. And as those kids my older kids have grown up and gotten married or had significant others. We've expanded our family to include other people now, which can be a challenge,
Yes.
because, you don't get to choose your kids' spouses. And we've been so lucky in that they have all chosen people that we like and that are also really Lexi likes, right? Also really kind and thoughtful people. So I just hope we just keep on, now we have added grandchildren to that, and they are also have been um, really kind and thoughtful people. So we just want to continue surrounding ourselves with that type of person, and that really gives us the inspiration that we need to on a daily basis.
One of the things that I've realized from my own life that we may not be perfect, but God made each of us victorious in different ways. And I've learned that victory does come in different forms.
Absolutely.
With, my brain tumor and being left with a limp, that's not what I wanted. The pain that I experienced is not what I wanted. But God created the person that He wanted me to be, the person He wanted Lexi to be, so that we could touch other people's lives, just like you've done with your books. That's absolutely amazing. And then I read where Dad was really responsible for the social media and the
Right.
outreach there. What's his name?
Ken.
Ken.
Yep.
Ken. Will we
Ken
say hello to
Haas.
Ken?
Thank you. He's a great guy.
Have you guys been involved with any local nonprofits or anything like that have been a benefit to you guys?
Well, we have run the international nonprofit Parents of Infants and Children with Kernicterus, which is Lexi's disorder.
What's it called?
Parents of Infants and Children with Kernicterus. We've run that for years. I've actually just recently stepped down as president, but I'm still on the board. So we help other families who are just starting out in this for resources and also for fellowship. There's nothing like being with people who have been through exactly what you're going through.
Absolutely.
So I would say a lot of our time has been spent with them. Locally, we do a lot with a small disability group that we get together and do things together. Those are our main, I think those are the main groups that we have really spent a lot of time with over the last few years.
And Grace Trumpauer was one of my first guests
Yeah,
on
she
this
is part of that
podcast.
disability group. Yes, we
Oh,
love Grace. She is so smart and articulate. And we met Grace when she was a real, like maybe in elementary school. And she just came right up to us and said, "Hi, I'm Grace."
that sounds like Grace. Well, I was going to ask you about your passions and hobbies, and I don't think I need to do that because you're busy all the time and giving back, not
Yeah,
just to Lexi.
I do love giving back. And I do think that's helps us make sense of terrible things that happen.
Lexi says yes.
Yeah. Being able to um, connect with people and share your experiences, that I think that's what makes all this, pulls it together and makes this puzzle into something that we can understand. So yeah, that was probably my greatest passion. I also love running. That's my other that's my one thing I really do for myself. It helps me clear my brain.
How often do you do it?
Every day. Every day.
Fantastic.
Got my run in this morning before
Yeah,
we came.
fantastic. We have to do that self-care, don't we?
We do. That's something I'm kind of coming to as I've gotten older, and trying to figure out, because it doesn't come naturally to me, just to take time for myself. But it is important, and I think it's especially important for caregivers, whether you have typical kids who are real little, or you have a person in your family with special needs. It's important for us to continue to fill our own cup, to be able to continue to help others.
And you've talked about your support system, which is so good for that. I know when my husband had to do everything for me, it took its toll on him.
Right.
I watched him, and in the very beginning, there were a lot of people around to help, but as your life goes on, so does theirs. But yours doesn't change as much, but they've got a normal life to get back to. So yeah, I have a whole new respect for caregivers.
Yeah, they are not given the supports in our in the United States that they really need to be, because they're widely relied upon, especially adult persons with special needs usually have a family caregiver somewhere in the picture that really needs the support to keep, to keep things going on all fronts.
Yes. What is the greatest lesson, if you can pick one, that you've learned from being Lexi's mom?
Oh, that one's easy, and I think I touched on that before. It's learning to be happy. I think my grandmother used to say, "Blossom where you're planted."
Oh, yes, I've heard
Yeah.
that.
So, despite what your circumstances are, and I'm not saying that every moment of your life just has to be joyful and happy, but grieve and be unhappy in the moment. Everybody is, otherwise you just wind up, depressed and not sure why. You've got to experience those feelings and those emotions, but being able to come out of that and come back and find something good and the happiness, and that is something that Lexi has taught me for sure, and that I try to emulate, but never as effectively as she is able to do it on a daily basis.
Beautiful. Where can we buy your book?
Well, you can get it at our publisher's website, on it's Little Brown Young Readers. You can pick it up on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, on pretty much any online retailer. You can just Google The Year of the Buttered Cat. It's also available around town, and at Barnes and Noble, Park Row Books, Main Street Books in Davidson has always carried it. So feel free to go in. I love the little local booksellers. If you go in and ask for it and they don't have it, they can order it for you. And we love to support the small
business.
businesses and small little local bookshops. I know there's a new one down here in Monroe on downtown. We went in and browsed. They didn't have it, but anybody can order it. Any bookseller can order it. And that helps us if you do ask for it, because they might ask them to keep it in stock.
There's a nonprofit in town called A Cause for Tea. They've got a little bookstore back there with children's books. That'd be a great spot.
Oh, that's very cool. I'll have to check
Great
that out.
spot. Well, one of the things that I haven't mentioned about the book is there's fabulous pictures in the back
Yeah.
throughout Lexi's journey, and the dog, the cat, just so much stuff that I would encourage you guys to get the book and read it. Well, thank y'all so much for being my guest today.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for joining us on the Soaring Through Adversity podcast. Be sure to follow us on our YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe. You can also find us wherever you listen to podcasts. New episodes are published on the first day of each month. For more information about the foundation, Victory Advantage, please go to thevictoryadvantage.org. Once again, that is thevictoryadvantage.org. And always remember, faith first, not last, will lead to victory in time. And until next time, keep soaring.